Okay, so what we're going to be talking about now is actually the creation of sigils. So if you don't know what a sigil is, and you don't know the difference between a sigil and a seal, for example, seals from the Lesser Key of Solomon or grimoires, that kind of a thing. If you don't know the difference, then watch the previous video in this series. Now, this is a sigil I've created. Now, again, when we're talking about sigils, we're talking about either ones that we've generally created with a purpose. So there's always really going to be a purpose in mind when you create them. Some people will turn artwork into sigils afterwards, and there's nothing wrong with doing that. But really, the only things that you need to be aware of when it comes to creating sigils is that A, they need to be unique, B, they should not look like a creature or animal or person or a cartoon character or anything like that. It shouldn't be something that you can personify, okay? And it needs to be easy for you to incorporate into logo designs or put on t-shirts, or basically needs to be fit for purpose for what you're doing. Now this sigil, for example, here, that you could turn into a logo or, you know, print it on a t-shirt or something like that. However, it is somewhat complicated. Now, in terms of what you want to do with your sigil and how you want to empower it, will really depend on the sort of sigil approach that you take, okay? So remember, if you're working on it yourself, okay, it doesn't really matter too much because it's going to be something that you focus on. Or if you're working with other people, then something that they focus on. If you're wanting to put it out there and incorporate sigil magic into, you know, a logo design for a company or something like that, for example, then that kind of needs to fit with you know, logos and that kind of thing. That's a little bit probably too complicated for a logo. If I was going to create a sigil that makes money for a company and have it be the logo of the company, for example, that's probably too complicated. However, if I wanted to create a sigil and focus on and empower it myself, that's, you know, that's fairly simple, that's easy. Okay, so we'll talk about a couple of ways in which you can create sigils. So have something in mind in terms of what you actually want to do, so to empower your sigil. So what we're going to do now is I'm going to show you my method for creating sigils that I would use for just working on myself, so something that I'm going to empower. Okay, so because money is quite popular at the moment, I'm going to use money. Now for me, when I think of money, I think of gold, silver and bronze. Okay, so I'm going to use gold, silver and bronze pens. Now, thinking of money and thinking of bringing me money, that's what I want this sigil to do. So I've decided that my sigil is designed to bring me money. I'm going to take a silver pen and I'm going to start thinking about what I want this sigil to do. And what happens is my subconscious will either give me images or will say draw that, then draw that, then draw that, then draw that, then draw that. So it will kind of, I'll have pictures and feelings as to where I want my pen to go. Or alternatively, I could literally just put my pen down and close my eyes and just start to squiggle and draw various things. The most important thing that I would want is I would want the fact that I'm letting my subconscious do the work. So I'm not putting too much thought into what I am actually wanting to create. So I'm not saying, okay, I'm going to draw a triangle and then I'm going to draw this and then I'm going to draw that. I'm literally just letting the pen do the work. I'm feeling I want to shape like this, blah, blah, blah. And I'm going to go through my color choices until I feel like I've had enough. Okay, now I quite like to incorporate different colors, and this doesn't necessarily always come out very well on the camera, but there are quite a few colors. Now obviously the amount of squiggles that are on there are entirely unique, okay? So replicating this particular design, yeah, is not going to be very easy. Okay, so if I was going to create a sigil that I could replicate, okay, because I could replicate this design by taking a picture of it, for example, and then print it out or photocopying it or something like that. But again, with sigil magic, it's one of those things that you kind of want your idea in mind of how you want to use the sigil, okay? So in terms of what I suppose you would kind of think of in terms of automatic writing, if you think of automatic writing and squiggles and that kind of thing, that's one way of doing it, okay? I'm going to show you a couple of ways of doing it, and then we're going to compare and contrast them. So the next way of doing it is literally to write down what it is that you want your sigil to do. So if I want it to bring me money, I'm just writing that, bring me money. Now what I could do is to take every third letter, every other letter and get rid of it, for example. So I've got an R, an N, an M, another M, an N, and a Y, okay? And then I could start rearranging these letters. So I could go N, M, R, Y, okay? Because basically I wanted to jumble things up. Again, because the most important thing is to literally make sure that every sigil that you do is unique and not like any other. Some people will decide to take letters and rearrange them. Other people, if we're using the bring me money, for example, what they might decide to do is spell out bring me money. So they might decide to, instead of writing it out like that, they might decide to write it one letter over the top of each other, so that you get this kind of effect, that it's a jumbly mess. Now that's going to be all completely unique. Now there's pros and cons to these, okay? And again, I will go over the pros and cons in a minute. But basically, what you could do a slightly nicer version of that, and again, because we're talking about money, I might decide to incorporate a different color. We'll go with gold. And I could think about, okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to make this slightly nicer. So in terms of bring me money, I am going to use all of those different letters, but I'm going to create something a little bit nicer. So I've written bring me. There we go. So now we have a slightly more unusual design. Okay, it's kind of like if you had a load of letters, you know, like those alphabet letters that you stick on fridges with the magnets on, and jumbled them all up. That's kind of like that. So they're all kind of unique to a certain extent. You know, you're not going to necessarily find someone else that has that exact same design, even if they're using the same sentence. Okay, now the one other thing that I would say in terms of this kind of work is the approach, again, that you're taking is going to depend on how you want to use it. Now for these kind of designs, so with something like this, then that's not very good for incorporating in and putting out there. If you wanted to use that in a logo or something like that, or you wanted to put that out there, you could focus your energy on this and empower the sigil, and then literally stick it in and burn it in the cauldron, okay? and get rid of it. However, if it's something that you want to put out there in the world, what you really want is you want a nicer design. So remember, it needs to be unique, but it doesn't need to be overcomplicated or simple. Now this is obviously using letters, okay? The other ones that I've done before have been kind of squiggles that haven't made a huge amount of sense. I prefer the squiggle method for the simple reason that I don't tend to put my sigils out there and give them to other people. I'll create a sigil for one specific use, and then I'll get rid of it after it's achieved what I want it to achieve. So again, another thing that you want to consider about when you are talking about what is the purpose of my sigil is, am I going to be putting this sigil out there and getting other people to empower it? And am I going to be using it, you know, and printing it on t-shirts and stuff like that? Or is it just my own use? Again, you can get away with a lot more if it's just your own use. However, if it's something that you're putting on a logo, for example, then that is a little bit different. When it comes to logo design, of course, you know, you may decide that because the way in which most people use logos, they can be either strange little squiggles even, or strange little designs that don't seem to make a lot of sense. However, they could also be words. So providing that your logo and the words that you're using are unique enough, you could turn them into a logo. So for example, if I had a building company and my building company was called Mr. Fix It, and I decided to create a sigil with the words M, F and I, what I could do is incorporate that. There we go. I've got a sigil essentially here. Okay, it's just made from 3 letters, but are those letters exactly the same? Are they different enough from everyone else's logo to make sure that that is recognizable and that the energy that's put out there from this is recognizable? Okay. Now, when it comes to obviously your design, again, I can't stress enough that you need to be thinking about how you're wanting to use the sigil. Because if you've been using a sigil like this for a long time and you find that it works really well, but that then you think, oh, I might want to incorporate this and print it on a t-shirt, or, you know, put it out there for other people to empower accidentally, then this isn't going to translate well. So that's why it's so important when it comes to design work. Now, I've already talked a little bit about uses for sigils and the fact that you're either going to have a very, very, very specific purpose in mind, or you're creating a doorway in which people can feed the energy to. So what I want to talk about in the next video is the differences between those and how you might use those things differently.